and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. A roll call when you're ready, Peggy.
Mr. Alt? Mr. Beistel?
Here.
Mr. Calero?
Here.
Mrs. Love? Mr. Miller?
Here.
Mr. Polakowski?
Here.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Here.
Mrs. Shipley? Mr. Benz?
Here.
Citizens' comments.
I have no citizens' comments, comment cards this evening, and let the record show that Mrs. Shipley had an employment engagement this evening and was unable to be here.
All right, we'll go to new business.
Well, actually, we'll have our budget discussion, and then
we'll do this,
do the regular voting meeting. Mr. Marnell has passed out a document for you, 2014-15 budget process. And at this point in time, Mr. Marnell, I'll ask you to talk a little bit about what you've done, where we are, and where we need to get.
Certainly. This is a status update. We're on the road to a final budget. So just to go over the process briefly, I don't want to belabor too much. I know this is an extra evening out, but this is more or less a strategic level meeting. We're not going to get into the nuts and bolts of line item details. Again, this budget is a work in process. Still have a lot of work to go, completing it to get to that preliminary draft that we'll need to adopt in May. But we are on track and working towards that. So we'll have another status update. If not next week, then for our regular meeting. Administration still meeting, having discussions about what needs need to be addressed for next school year. Of course, we look at all the cost drivers, the normal salaries and wages, benefits, energy costs, insurances. I got a meeting next week with Mr. Swink and Mrs. Geyer on shoring up the transportation budget. Recently, the Westmoreland IU Health Consortium passed a rate cap for health insurance costs for next year at 5.1%. So we know for our budgeting purposes that's the potential max that health insurance can be increased. So I was able to work that in. Of course, we know the retirement projected rate increase for next year, and again, that's subject to possible change when they meet in probably June again to pass the state budget. We're working with potential index to increase our supply costs of about 1.6%. Of course, I'm working with our electricity broker and our natural gas broker to try to shore up what our costs will be for those two fuels. And of course, we have to contend with diesel and gasoline costs, so on and so forth. We got numbers to work with from the governor in February, so I was able to put those in to the budget. Well, let's just get to the summary page, because that's what everybody's interested in. That would be, I think, page 12 of the document. And I apologize, the copier makes rather small page numbers. They're in your lower right. This is what we look like with our working draft right now. And I arranged it in the traditional cost categories, salaries and wages, employee benefits, purchased professional services, purchased property services, other purchased services, supplies, equipment, bond interest, bond principal, and budgetary reserve. And I put in the 13-14 column the numbers that we're working with this year, So that's the 13-14 budget for all the cost categories, and the 13-14 budgeted revenues. And of course, we started off into this school year with a potential projected deficit of $249,000, which at this point it's been eliminated. We don't have that deficit to contend with. So key component of that was we received our refund from the Westmoreland Intermediate Unit on health insurance costs of $222,000, and of course holding back on purchases in other areas. So I think worst case scenario is this year we'll break even. Little better forecast. I'm seeing a potential positive return, similar to what we experienced with the 12-13 year, a little over $200,000. So that may repeat itself. Right now, let's keep ourselves more on the conservative side. Numbers, forecasts will get better as we continue to collect information, work the numbers. The 14-15 budget draft, as you can see, right now we've got a projected increase in salaries and wages, looking at the employee contracts and other labor groups of about 2.95%. I got the major categories there in employee benefits. The big one is employee medical insurance. Of course, we know there's the rate cap there is 5.1%. Of course, we've got the Social Security, Medicare taxes on employee wages, and of course that increases as wages increase. The second biggest category in employee benefits, of course, is the PSERS retirement contributions. And right now that rate is set to go up 26% for the new year. Under purchased professional services, things that are included in that, services we purchased from the Westmoreland Intermediate Unit, our E-Academy, commissions to our tax collectors, our CSIU program, but purchase services for special needs students, that's the biggest category in there. Anyway, I'm using right now an estimate of 5% increase in those areas. I know we're waiting for the Westmoreland Intermediate Unit's budget for all the special need categories, and we should be receiving that shortly. Under purchase property services, you got your disposal, your lawn care, electricity is a big component of that, water and sewage, maintenance and repairs, copiers. Go ahead. Good question.
Lawn care, I thought our maintenance or custodians did that. Is that something?
Well, they do, but those are the costs that go into lawn care. Supply costs that go into it.
Okay, I just thought that was all part of the maintenance department. Okay.
They provide the labor, but there's still other expenses that go into that. I'm using an estimate right now, pretty close to CPI of 2.1%. Other big purchase services, of course, that includes your school busing in there, your insurances, your property, your casualty, auto, fire, etc. Our telecommunication, telephones, our internet services, advertising, printing, tuition to other schools. We have tuition that goes out to charter schools, and we got tuition to our Career Technology Center. We know our technology center's budget, we have that, but we're not sure about some of these other cost areas, so I'm using an estimate of 3% there. Again, as we work in the numbers, those estimates will get sharpened up. Under supply area, of course, you've got your general school and art supplies, textbooks, other periodicals. Natural gas is a component of supplies. We're looking at, again, using a CPI of about 2.1% there. Equipment purchases, I held that flat. This year we've got a little over $92,000 budgeted for various equipment needs. I know there's always some instructional equipment that's needed. The tech department is looking at some server upgrades. So short of having an actual list of their needs, I kept that line item flat. Bond interest, we're scheduled to have a decrease in bond interest. So that line item goes down $60,000. However, as interest goes down, we're paying more on principal, so the principal goes up $60,000. So those two kind of offset each other. And of course, past practice, we've always had an amount in there for potentialities of $400,000. We didn't touch that last year for 12-13. I don't anticipate needing to touch that this year, so I dropped that category down to $100,000. Overall, budget to budget, we're looking at right now on the expenditure side of $902,000 as a projected expenditure increase, or 3.42%. On the bottom, the revenues, I have built in to the local revenues the Act 1 tax index increase of 2.9%. So that's included in that increase under local revenues. I built in under the state revenues those numbers from Governor Corbett's budget. And the biggest increase in there is the component that he added, the Ready to Learn grant, which is an item that we have to discuss internally how we're going to utilize those funds. Federal grants I've held flat because those grants are still in the planning stage for next year, and I know those numbers always come in later in the spring. And of course, built into our expenditures under the 100 is the payments out for the early retirement incentive program. So of course, we have built into that committed fund balance the use of monies that have been saved. So on the revenue side is the $304,000 for paying for those ERIPs, and of course the potentiality of maybe needing the budgetary reserve of $100,000. So between the budgeted expenditures and the budgeted revenues, we got a potential deficit of nearly $782,000.
And that's including a 2.9% tax increase?
Yes, yes.
Now, what I have to remind you is last year, for those of you that were here for our first budget draft, does anybody remember what our first deficit was last year on the first draft?
It was high.
It's emblazoned into my brain. I remember it was 1.4 million. All right, we were able to work that and work that and work that until we got it down to the 249, and then through so some good fortune with the healthcare consortium and a lot of frugal spending on the part of administration. As Jim said, we will probably make that up and probably that much again, and end up, instead of being that much in the red for the current year, we're hoping to be that much in the black. So don't get too alarmed over the 781,958 yet, because we have a lot of work to do.
Absolutely. And had we done a very early Act 1 budget, like I'm sure you probably did that last winter, that number, this number here would have been worse. So, the further you're away from doing your budget, for example, if we had done the Act 1 in January, that number would have been higher, because we would not have known the potential increase that the governor is presenting, and of course it is election year, so, but I won't go there.
A question. When you go under budget, where you have a surplus from the year, like you're saying this year we might have as much over as we had anticipated being short, do we apply that to the following year, or do we just put that in the fund balance? What's normally done?
That goes into the fund balance.
It goes into the fund balance.
Bottom line, it goes into the fund balance. Yeah, there's a slide here that, of course, you talk about the reasons for a tax increase. No one likes to see a tax increase, but and when you think about it, you want to try to maintain to the greatest extent possible the monies you've been able to save, your fund balance. If you've been on a track of deficit budgets, a tax increase, even moderate ones, will help mitigate that, but potentially avoid having deficit spending. And of course, like any entity, we have to try to keep pace with inflation. There's a lot of cost categories that we have little to no control over, other than trying to be as frugal as possible. Of course, like everyone at home, we've got increased utility costs, increased health care costs, increased retirement contributions, of course, continually increased costs in the special needs services, and of course, for your employees, increased salaries and wages, and other increases in the budget area. Next slide, just, we like to have some bragging rights among the business managers, and we like to look at, who's either not passing a tax increase budget or who has the lowest millage rate in the county. And I apologize for any of you who live in the Fayette County communities. I have to do a chart, I have to do some research on the Fayette schools, but on the Westmoreland side, your school system is in 15th place, which is good. You're at the bottom of millage rates in the county. Only Monessen and Norwin are lower than us, and we're at 71.06 currently. And if you went the full Act 1 increase, that would raise your rate up to 73.12. So if Hempfield doesn't raise taxes, we'll be tied with them, but I suspect that they're probably looking at a tax increase. So we might hold our place down there at number 15, which is not bad at all. Talking about that fund balance on slide number 16, we came into this school year with $6,140,000 in fund balance. You have a committed portion of that from prior board actions towards the early retirement incentive program of $1,084,000. You have a category called assigned. And I imagine in the past that reasoning there was to hold a set amount of money for contingencies or emergencies. I know a portion of that we always have to hold for our federal grant programs. And then, of course, there is that unassigned fund balance. And that's that number that you mentioned, Mr. Claro, about, when you end the school year on a positive note, it falls to that line there. Until, based on discussions that we could have, you could say, you know what, we want to take some of that money and maybe set it aside for, particular capital improvement program or technology, whatever. And you can do that. And again, looking forward, we always have to keep an eye ahead. We know with state subsidies next year, probably anticipate them to be level to minor increases. If the governor gets reelected, I imagine we probably won't see any major increases in subsidies. If we get a new governor, who knows? New governor might want to start off with a new program. We don't know. So I expect it to stay level to maybe minor increases. I'm not anticipating that the Act 1 index will increase significantly, so in my outlook, I figure it'll probably stay about the same. And of course, our health insurance will probably continue to be in the trend area of 4 to 8% per year. And of course, retirement, for the current year, it went up 36%. For next year, it's projected to go up 27%. And if the rate holds steady for 15-16, it's going to go up 21% there. So this is where we're at right now. I know we still have a lot of work to do, a lot of internal discussions to continue having. And we'll provide another update on our road to a final budget. Oh, for the Fayette County, I made a jot down. Right now, the Fayette County residents are at 14 meals, and with the potential Act 1 tax increase at 2.9%, that would raise it to 14.406 meals.
Just a little history on our tax history. There was no tax increase last year. The year before, there was a 1.8% tax increase. Prior to that, I think it had been 7 years of holding the line on taxation. So that's just kind of a little history.
And you can expect a PowerPoint slide on that down the road. As I go back and do some more, continue to do research, get more familiar with the numbers and the history of this school district, and I'll go backwards, put together a tax millage chart, as well as other ones. Thoughts, comments, questions?
I have a question. As far as the early retirement incentives, we don't have anybody that's available for that anymore. We've kind of reached the max on that, or not?
We're not planning to offer one this year.
Okay.
There has been some talk among the staff that they may be asking if we would consider that in a future year, but I'm not sure when that year would be.
The question on the jumps out there, the 26% and then in future years. And we've heard about it a lot, but say a little more about that. Is that assigned to us by the state fund? That I know it's
Yes.
underfunded.
Yes.
And what the legislation, this legislature is picking up its percentage, and this is what it's assigned to the school
Yes.
district?
What we do is we pay out the full amount on the expenditure side, and then on the revenue side, under state subsidy, we get half of that money back. So they do fund their share back. Many years ago, I liked this system better then, where we just paid our share. We reported our payroll numbers to the retirement board. The retirement board sent a report to Department of Ed. They paid their share directly to the retirement board. Somewhere around 93 or 94, they changed that system, made us put the money out first, and then they come back with a subsidy. So thinking cynically, we always felt that, at some point, somebody might come along and say, you know what, let's just freeze that retirement contribution. So it hasn't happened yet, and certainly hope it never does happen. But yes, the retirement board's actuaries recommend a rate, and then it has to go to the legislature for final vote. And then that's where sometimes the suggested rate gets changed, depending on the political sensitivity of it. Because when the retirement board recommends a change in the contribution rate, of course, the state government has to come up with more money on their side to help fund that.
Jim, do you want to talk a little bit about what happened historically with the retirement system when the markets were booming and the fund was making money, and how the legislature responded, and also...
that was another chart that I used to do, and that's another one that I want to recreate, but just to give you a flavor, I came into this business in 1989. The rate, it's the combined rate, okay, state share and local share was 19.89%. Several years earlier, it had been over 25% contribution rate. So each year then, going through the 90s, as the stock market improved, the rate of returns were good, retirement fund was making money. Of course, the actuaries were still looking very, very forward in their future, recommending either holding rates or slightly lower rates. Well, the legislature would look at that and say, wait a minute, you've got all this money in there, we can drop that rate. So the rate kept dropping to a point where, I think it was 2001, 2002, it nearly hit zero. It was like 1 point something percent. And then it's been on a slow, steady climb since then. For employees, I was hired at the 6.5% rate, so that's the rate I paid until, I think it was in 2001 when they changed the retirement formula. They put in a factor going from 2% to 2.5%. They created a new retirement class. If you as an employee wanted to experience that greater factor of 2.5%, you had to agree to go from 6.5% to a 7.5% contribution rate. So those of us look ahead, decided that's what we want to do. We probably wouldn't be in this shape in a retirement system had they held the employer side, state and local side at some rate, maybe matching the employee rate. So in those good years when the markets were having great returns, they were still putting money into the system. So instead of doing this roller coaster ride, they had done basically a flat funding methodology. They might not be in the mess that they're in. So, they're still debating on the state side what to do with it. With interest rates as low as they were, I thought the one idea to fund a bond issue to fund that deficit would have been a great idea, considering how low rates are. But we'll see.
I think the other thing that will happen, and I know just prefacing, many of us, if you're a teacher now, this is a basic, you came in on it, and many of us are beneficiaries of a guaranteed income, a retirement income. But eventually, we're going to have to join the rest of society in having a guaranteed contribution. And then it's like a 401k where teachers have a retirement, each have their, and then, because I just don't see that the system, it's too out of kilter with the way the rest of society, because then if the economy goes through, a market economy that we're in goes through ups and downs. And so if you're a retired teacher, you go with it. You know what I mean? You're a part of and you're not in a kind of a separate economy in the public. And it's not only teachers, other public employees, but I think eventually, and it's really a legislative issue, but I think they need to do that. And I think it's also for the integrity of public education, of its standing financially with our publics.
I think everybody agrees to that level.
Yeah, but they won't vote.
Getting.
They won't vote for it because it's simply, as I said, you're talking about them saying that we have the ability to tax you. This is not a company. We weren't making money as a company. You're right. That's what we would do. But as a government, we can tax. You know, what incentive is there to go to that? There is no incentive until everybody says, I don't want to be taxed anymore, and I'm not paying any more tax. That's not going to happen. So, like I said, you don't have the leverage you have in the private company. And I agree, we need to do that. But without a profit and loss, and only being able to tax to get your money, taxing is what they'll do. And state, local, federal, all going to do the same thing. Teach why would they do other? There's a lot of votes too out there. There's people that like their defined pension plan. It's unfortunate.
Well, in other news, we got our big installment check on our turf claim. Over $441,000 check came in earlier this week. So.
Is that the end? Is that all work?
There will be one final settlement with the insurance trust, and it'll be a small amount. Final architectural and engineering costs, some other.
What would be the difference then between what we put out?
We'll come back with that number.
I don't know the
Right.
exact figures. It'll be a
Yeah.
little bit less than we'd originally predicted because the
Right.
insurance agreed to do some of the preventive work
Yes.
for us, which actually is in, by the way. The curbing is in, the stone is in and mostly graded, and the turf is ordered. So we're moving ahead nicely there. Yeah, we will maybe have that figure for you, hopefully at the planning meeting.
Those between the turf claim / project and this bond refinancing, a lot of hours went into both. Everybody, Doc, worked hard. A lot of hours put in on it. On the turf side, certainly kudos to our insurance broker, Mr. DeFurio, who really worked hard on that claim. And as Dawn and I were talking one day, I said, I think the PSBA Insurance Trust owes us a bonus or something, because had we moved forward in the fall, in September, when they were pushing us, the estimates then, because these contractors were still engaged in work, so if you want them to pull away and go on another job, you were going to pay a premium for their services. The estimates were in the high 600,000 range, $680,000+. So in the end, the insurance companies saved money by going this route, taking our time, involving the architect, doing proper engineering, and doing a bid in the wintertime when these guys are they're anxious for work, line things up, and we might be one of the first ones out of the chute doing this kind of project. So worked out to the insurance company's benefit. And I'm going to remind them that when we talk about rates. we're in that process right now of talking renewal, workers' comp, property casualty, and all that. So I'll let you know if how successful I am with that.
Any other comment or discussion on the budget? Questions?
A question on the on the fund balance, the assigned and the unassigned is about 5 million there. Is the assigned, however, that is a, remind me, does it take board action to move those numbers, or is that for all practical purposes?
If you read the accounting literature,
Okay.
you mentioned a term maybe at one time there, GASB, Governmental Accounting Standards Board. They're the ones that come up with this terminology. In the old days, we called it, unreserved fund balance, reserved fund balance. So they keep playing with the terminology. But your unassigned, we called it unreserved fund balance. That was the money that could be used to balance your budget. Could be used for any purpose, so a one-time project, whatever. Then they come up with these various designations. So if you go up to assigned, an internal decision was made. Maybe it was with discussion with the school board. Hey, let's pull some of that money aside. Thinking about potential capital projects, emergencies, or whatever. Nothing in particular was penned with that money, and we can certainly do that as a group. But the committed fund balance, now that's the one that takes governmental action. And as I understand from talking with Dr. Molnar several years ago, when you went into this early retirement incentive program, which was to help, we all did it in this business, to help with our budgets. The group made a good decision. You know what? We had a healthy fund balance. Let's take some of that and let's commit it towards just that program, so that we can't touch that going down the road. It would take another official board action to touch that money and change its purpose. So that was smart. Good move on your parts. As far as that middle section, that's you're on your way towards maybe committing it, maybe not. You've still got flexibility with that money. You have a very healthy fund balance. You're looking at in total dollars, 23% of your projected expenditures. So that's very good, and that's being prudent and careful with your money. So
If something happens, can you take from unassigned and move it to, I'm sorry, can you take from assigned and move it to unassigned, or you can?
yes, under the accounting literature, that level of fund balance can be utilized by senior management. In this case, superintendent, myself, and I'm sure anytime if we would intend to do something like that, we'd have discussions with board members. But
The assigned portion for the federal grants, that's just simply like reimbursing yourself. We're waiting for money from the federal government. We have to have it available until it goes into the account.
What happens is, you have to go through a matching process. Your federal grant money comes in, and we have to expend it for particular purposes, and those grants roll over from year to year. I know one of my goals, I'd like to see us get to the point down the road where a federal grant comes in and we expend it during that year. We don't have to worry about holding money and rolling it over. But that's just the nature of the game. We've all done that. So we have to make sure that we have that money set aside to cover Title I, Title II, you have program improvement funds. Good
Other
questions.
Questions, discussion?
I'd just say this on taxes. We always prefer to be under the lowest when they're on some levels. And Norman is a good school district, but to say this, I don't equate low taxes with necessarily high achievement, because there are underpaid schools where there is low achievement, but somehow we've managed to do low taxes with high achievement here, and I think we could talk about this at times. It's tremendous to the staff, to administration, I think to parents here who care about education. But having said that, I'm a firm believer that that it's not good to hit the public with a 6 or 7% increase, and some of the neighboring districts are going to take a pretty good hit, as I've been reading the paper here the next. But if and it does cost to have that it be a modest increase. So I think it's wise for us to consider this as a modest increase.
It is an interesting chart. I would expect a district like Norwin to be near or at the bottom because of their tax base. There's a lot down there producing. There's two ways to increase your tax revenue. You raise your millage rate, or your tax base does it for you. Interesting, on the other hand, that you see other wealthier districts like Franklin at the top. So again, I'm not making a judgment on Franklin or Norwin or any of the others. It's an interesting mix. Suburban districts, rural districts, city school districts. So it's interesting, and I'm glad to see that I'm on the team that's fighting to keep the tax rate as low as possible, because that's one of your attractions besides high performing schools, national blue ribbon schools. Your district's an achiever, and of course you want to encourage families to move in and bring more customers, in this case students. And one of the factors I'm sure that any prudent homeowner family would look at, how much taxes am I going to pay locally? So you look at the school system for your kids, the taxes on your family budget, how nice the area is. A lot of factors go into it.
Other questions or comments on the budget? Next thing we wanted to talk to you a little bit about in terms of finance is the bond refunding. And our broker actually pulled the trigger yesterday.
Yes.
And the reason for that was the Feds spoke and talked about the fact that short-term interest rates were about to increase. And because of that, the bond market softened, and every day that went by, it appeared that our savings would begin to evaporate. So in order to minimize that, Piper Jaffray did what they needed to do yesterday. And just to give you a synopsis of how that ended for us, if you look at page 1, I highlighted for you other uses of funds, additional proceeds, $102,149.82. That will be cash at closing, and that's the money that we had talked about that would be utilized toward capital improvements. And then the next page that I want you to look at is the next to the last page. There's a whole lot of enumeration in the middle of all of that. But if you look at the next to the last page, these are our debt service payments. So on 6/30/14, there will be no change. Our payment will actually increase by $452 in 2015. But from there, it will go down in 15-16 to drop by $5,289. And then the savings get much bigger. We go $63,000 to $67,000 depending on the year. And that was structured that way, and Jim can talk a little bit more about this. But it was structured that way because the way our previous debt service schedule was set up, there were jump years where our debt service payments were going to go up considerably. So what we tried to do was set up our payments to even that out rather than front load it. We could have front loaded almost all of it really and balanced the budget, pretty much this year. But then next year, you'd have been saying, well, gee whiz, so what happened? So we tried to spread that out over about 7 or 8 years to help with future budgets. So all that savings amounted to $395,521 for a total of a little over $497,000 in savings. It was our net figure there. And Chris Shelby was not able to be here this evening. He is able to come to a future meeting and explain that in more detail if you would like to have that happen.
You've done this with one bond issue that you...
Yes. Yes. Which saved a lot of administrative cost.
So it's the 395 plus the 102?
Correct.
Correct.
Those are the two numbers of the one is spread out over the
Right.
debt service.
Yes.
And Jim, what was that final number, 497? Do you have it in front of you?
497 and some odd change.
Yeah. I think it was approximately
600.
497.5.
670 bucks, but yeah, we went back and forth.
Very close to $500,000.
Yeah, we had a lot of discussions late last week, early this week, how the markets looked, once they got the rating in, how to structure the savings, and I didn't want us to have any budgeting surprises. If we had taken all the savings up front, cash and debt service savings, then we'd have bumps down the road, and I didn't like that scenario. The scenario that we came out best was, let's take the upfront savings. Let's look at that cash that we project needing for these capital improvement projects, and the rest, let's try to smooth out those bump steps, and they were able to do that. And this method produced in net present value savings several $1,000s more than pushing it up front. Again, that works out because of the various coupon rates that are in the bonds. But this way, you have some savings down the road, which certainly will help in those budget seasons.
Do you want or need further clarification from Mr. Shelby on what he did there? We can have him come either the 3rd or the 10th if you'd like. But if everyone is understanding what's going on here, there's no need to have him come.
You want to ask that next week's meeting, that way everybody will be here. I think just have us decide, we don't need him to come, and maybe Mrs. Love or Mrs. Shipley or someone thinks. Is that it? Okay. There's 6 of us here now, we can decide.
Yeah. I'm fine with understanding what we have here in front of us.
Is there anyone who wants Mr. Shelby to come in?
I'm fine with this explanation. He was here, we had a lot of context for this from the other things.
Right. Okay, very well.
Very good.
That is what we have in terms of finance for this evening, and then we do have a couple of business items that we wanted to just go over with you and get some approvals.
You ready for that?
I'm ready for that, if you are.
Okay. New business, under new business, NB-1, amend resolution for sale of administration building and adjacent land.
Right. The resolution that you passed at the last meeting indicated that the building would be available for inspection from 3 to 7 p.m. on April the 30th, 2014. In looking at my calendar, I discovered that I will be at a superintendent's meeting on April the 30th, 2014. So we'd like you, if you don't mind, to amend that resolution to the 28th so that I can be here when the building is being previewed.
What day of the week is that?
Monday. Do I hear a motion?
Make a motion.
Second? Roll call, please.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Mr. Calero?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes?
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mr. Benz?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
And the next item that we have is the multipurpose paper bids. The IU Purchasing Consortium, which Mr. Marnell is a member, had put multipurpose paper out to bid, and we thought we would just get this out of the way so that they can go ahead and get their order placed. The lowest bidder was the WB Mason company, so it's recommended that the board award the allotted bid for multipurpose paper and purchase the items for the school district's quantity request at the reference prices from WB Mason Company. The party indicated whom the Westmoreland Intermediate Unit Joint Purchasing Consortium is recommended as the lowest responsible bidder, meeting or equaling specs for the 2014-2015 school year. Jim, do you want to add any comment there? You sat through those meetings and...
Well, I can tell you this, WB Mason, the bid was awarded in total. There was several bidders: Contract Paper Group, Linden Meyer, Monroe, Unisource Worldwide, WB Mason, and Expedex. And in total dollars, WB Mason's order for the county will be $568,726.27. And the next lowest bidder was Unisource at $635,348, so it's a $74,000 difference, and which we were very pleased with as a group. It's quite that's spread out over all of us, of course, but we can't get that kind of pricing doing it on our own. So this is one of those times where obviously joint purchasing together is well worth the effort. So I certainly recommend that you approve this.
Are there any questions or comments?
Need a motion?
Okay. Motion by Levi Miller, second. Second by Mr. Polakowski. Roll call, please.
Mr. Calero?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes?
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Mr. Benz?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes. Motion passes. 6-0, 3 absent.
Thank you.
That is all I have for you this evening,
And
folks.
seeing no citizens' comments, is there anything else anybody else has to add to the meeting? Hearing none, then I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Miller, second by?
Second.
Second by Mr. Calero. All those in favor? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, folks. Have a great evening.